Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
We start off by taking refuge, and we can all do it together. Just repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha mind.
I take refuge in the Buddha mind.
I take refuge in the wisdom of the Dharma.
I take refuge in the wisdom of the Dharma.
I take refuge in the heart of the Sangha.
I take refuge in the heart of the Sangha.
Okay. Always good to begin with the transcendental truths. I decided last week that we're going to start doing talks based on Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Art of Living. Thich Nhat Hanh is a really interesting person, as you all know. He was ordained, he was in Vietnam, he was doing social action during the Vietnamese War. He happened to be going to the Paris Peace Conference when they had a big pogrom. He wasn't allowed to come back into Vietnam, and he began teaching Dharma. And he was an enormously successful, enormously powerful, enormously influential person. My friend Fred Epsteiner, who operates the Florida Community of Mindful Living in Tampa, and we go and teach there every year. Fred was his first ordained person. And Fred said that his experience of Thich Nhat Hanh was that when he was deeply engaged in social action early in his career, and as he evolved, that became less and less important to him. And he spent more and more time talking about whatever the common denominator of the Sangha that he was growing was. So he spent a lot of time talking about loving kindness, peace in every breath, step-by-step awareness. And I feel, he wrote, 30, 40 books. He's got centers all over the world. But I think this particular book, the one we're talking about here, The Art of Living, is the apex of his teaching. It just goes right to the heart of the Dharma. And so we're going to start doing some basically talks using this as the frame of reference. Easily available online. Probably you can get it used for a couple of bucks if you look around, and if you want to look out even further, you can find it for free, I'm sure. The reason I think it's the apex of his teaching is it goes directly to the non-dual. It goes directly to what is really essential in the nature of mind, the nature of life. And he doesn't talk in this particular book at all about social action. He talks about that that nothing outside can make us happy. Nothing outside can give us satisfaction. That is an internal process. The process of finding satisfaction and peace and happiness is an internal process. We can then function from that, and we can function lots of different kinds of ways. We can function in different social realms, in different religious or political realms. We can function, but the actual experience of equanimity, of clarity, of the open heart is an internal process. So it's not about, in this particular tradition, we don't propitiate any god saying, do it for me. We don't even talk to the Sangha saying, make me a kind person. It's an internal process. And so Thich Nhat Hanh, in this case, lays out the fundamental principles of how do we find liberation and function with freedom. And so he begins in this thing. I'm doing a talk for some group called, one of my classic themes, whole and complete, lacking nothing. And the first image for that is an image of the whole earth. The ones the astronauts saw, the ones NASA took pictures of back in the 70s, 80s. Picture of the whole earth. When we look at the whole earth, it's beautiful. It's clouds and blue and water. When we step back, everything looks just fine. And actually, that is the nature of mind. When we get caught by the details of, oh, I think the administration should do this, or I think I should be like that, we lose the whole. When we get involved with the particular, we begin losing the whole. So Thich Nhat Hanh is very, very good at just saying, okay, let's start off by the big view, the deep view, the fundamental view. Let's start off by seeing the whole potato, all at once, and not try to work our way there, not try to get there by plucking off the eyes of the potato. Let's not go from the particular to the ultimate. Let's just start right with the ultimate. Let's start with what's most essential. And he keeps emphasizing that this has got to be practical. It's got to be evidence-based. It's got to be not something that's theoretical. The fact that we have a lovely book in it, book is great, it's wonderful, find inspiration from it. And one of the problems, I think, with a book like this, it's so clear, it's so obvious, we read it and think, oh yes, of course. And we think that understanding is the same thing as experience. We have to verify it. And so I think that it's really, he emphasizes that right from the beginning, that we have to verify through our own empirical, direct experience. We have to verify. And that verification involves practice. And the number one tool for verification is awareness. There is no other tool than awareness that is good for verifying these fundamental positions. So we can discover who we really are. We can discover the nature of the world. We can discover the whole Kalamazoo. We can discover it all through directly looking. Now, when we're talking about directly looking, it's not just I'm looking with my eye, and my eye will see everything, but we have to actually look with the heart. We have to actually look with the whole being. So to look with the whole being means we understand our suffering, because when we look at the globe, when we look at the whole globe from the astronauts, it looks beautiful. There's no suffering. It's just clouds swirling around and occasional volcanoes and a few earthquakes, maybe a tsunami and big Pacific Ocean, and it's just things moving as they are. And so we have to understand how we lose that view. And then when we understand how we lose that view, we also have to be able to see through, so we can directly verify. If we can't directly verify it, it doesn't count. So that's where practice comes in. Hopefully we hear some inspiration, or have some aspiration, or have an intention, and then the follow-up, we have to verify it. We have to verify it. Now, the level of verification he is talking about, it's not I've got to verify it psychologically, not I've got to verify it by counting the errors, by counting all of my mistakes and trying to rectify them, but by going right to the fundamental insight, the fundamental root. It's what he keeps saying, okay, let's look right there. And then from the place of wholeness, we do the personal work that we need to do to refine our personalities, to clean up our karma, to help work with our friends. That we first see through our delusion, and that enhances the quality of our life right there. Because to have even a glimpse of we are not separate, have even a glimpse of that, suddenly things begin falling into place, which I think is his first point. Okay, there we go. First point. The first wrong view, Thich Nhat Hanh says, we need to liberate ourselves from is the idea that we are a separate self cut off from the world. The very first idea. In Buddhism, there's this whole doctrine called the 12-link chain of co-conditioned origination. It took me a while to learn how to say that fluidly. The 12-link chain of co-conditioned origination. 12-link chain is a whole series of the causal steps that lead to suffering and many different levels of suffering. But the number one causal step is separation. The idea that I am separate from everybody else. And you can see, just if a government decides that, we are separate from the rest of the world, it's going to cause lots of suffering. It's just what happens when the mind does that. So we have to verify for ourselves the integrity of our life that is connected and intimately intertwined with everyone. When we see that, we realize that what happens on the right affects what happens on the left, or vice versa. What happens on this side affects what happens on that side, affects everything, affects what happens in the center. So that, chosen just arrived now. So that insight is the first foundation of practice. And the way we get that insight is by a direct examination. And we can use the rational mind, or we can use the insight mind. The rational mind is so easy to use. It just says, basically, as we all know, everything that we perceive is processed right here in our own brain. All the photons, all the everything from the electromagnetic field is just energy until it's processed by our brain. So all of those politicians, all those trees, all those grasses, they're just energy until enough photons come here and our brain processes it. And how do we process it? We process it however we are programmed, however we are conditioned. So we don't actually process it according to, if we look carefully, according to I, me, and my. We really process what comes in according to the training of our particular culture, or our background. It's just electromagnetic energy comes into our eyes, our ears, our body, even our mind. And then we take those photons, we take that energy, and we transform it into whatever we happen to see, our particular world. And we're all acculturated in a very similar way. We're all, but that acculturation process is not personal. In a way, we inherit our karma. We inherit this habitual view. And part of practice is, how can we take the cultural inherited conditioning that we have, the conditioning that we've inherited from everybody, which is based upon separation, fear, anxiety, protection, all those things, and actually, how can we, without trying to negate that, how can we see into it and through it so that we can actually rest in a larger wisdom, and that this particular manifestation is a manifestation of the whole, manifestation of the holy, rather than a separate thing that is a kind of a blot on the world. Or if you're a different kind of person, that is a great blessing to the world. So, in order to, he continues, that we have to directly see we are not separate. And again, as I suggested, just use your rational mind. You take one single thing, take one single thing, just one pencil, although this particular pencil probably took 20 millennium to make because it's an Apple iPad pencil. Take one simple thing and you begin tracing back any one thing, one piece of food, one article of any sort, and you realize, oh, in order for that to exist, we had to have the whole petroleum industry. In order for that to exist, we had to have the whole software industry. In order for that to exist, we had to have the whole electronics industry. In order for it to exist in here, we had to be able to miniaturize all of the transistors. In order for that to happen, we had to have different kinds of algorithms. And you begin realizing everything is connected to everything else. And it's all processed right here. So if we hear a sound over here, it's processed here. If we hear a sound over here, it's processed here. If we hear news from this side or news from that side, it's all processed right here. We turn it into our particular world. And because of our conditioning, because of our habitual way of being, because of the habits that we have inherited, we're not guilty, just because of the habits we've inherited, just the way the karma has unfolded, then we receive all kinds of different propaganda. And if it happens to fit with our particular fear, it becomes very fearful. If it happens to fit with our particular hope, it becomes very aspirational. But the bottom line is we have to have a direct experience of the non-separation. Now that means, of course, we say non-separation, that means, and everything is processed right here, that means all those people in the world out there, in a way, are part of who I am. That crazy people, they're part of me. Depressed people, they're part of me. Arrogant people, they're part of me. Hopeless people, they're part of me. Successful people, they're part of me. Bodhisattvas, they're part of me. Saints, they're part of me. They're all part because we're not separate. And so seeing into the separation, seeing the non-separate means is an inclusive awareness. And so suddenly, when we're not afraid of the parts of ourselves, we're no longer afraid of the parts in the world that are nothing but ourselves, because we're the ones who processed all that data into the shapes and the sounds and things that we make. So he just says that first insight right there. And he'll talk about the different ways, because it's not just a matter of, oh yeah, I understand this, it makes sense. We actually have to do it. So we'll talk a little bit about how do we actually do that. And the first way is just rationally, like I was saying. We are connected to everything. If somebody is successful in the world, we are connected to their success. If they are a failure in the world, we are connected to their failure. If they are on the streets, we are connected. We are connected. We are connected to everything. It just makes sense. So it immediately begins to lower our level of fear and anxiety. Oh, I'm connected to people who are successful. I'm connected to people who are happy. I'm connected to people. And out of that connection comes the four immeasurables: loving kindness, sympathetic joy, equanimity, and compassion. And the next place that he talks about is we think, oh, I am just this. Already began addressing that a little bit. I am this body. This body is me. And this body is me, and as long as it's vital and healthy and I like it, I'm happy with it. And as soon as it starts getting warts and cracks and crevices, and as soon as it starts aching and all its joints swell up, I don't like it. And when we think this body is who we are, we also think that when the body disappears, we will disappear. I mean, that's a standard Western culture 101. That I am alive as long as my body is functioning in a certain kind of way, and if the body stops functioning, I will disappear. Now, it's important when we're looking at this is really, really, from the outside, those of us who've been with people who are dying, who have sat with people who are dying, who have seen dead people and seen corpses and seen dead animals, from the outside, it looks pretty dead. And in this mind, we have the capacity to see things in lots of different ways. But the real practice here is looking at what is it that's alive right here. And there is no evidence, you have no evidence that what is alive right here will not always be alive. There's plenty of evidence our body will change, our mind will change, but that's not who we are. That's not our essence. There is no evidence that the eye that sees, and that's a kind of holder for a minute. The eye that sees always wakes up. We go into deep dreamless sleep. We forget ourselves, and we always wake up. We go have a surgery. and we're under anesthesia. We always wake up. The only evidence we have is that we always wake up. And if we actually look at the waking up, we're not actually even aware of not being awake. We're only aware of awake, change of state, awake. We're always awake, always aware. And so we have to begin to realizing, that what I thought was who I am, this particular lump, this particular shape, I got to deal with this. This is my responsibility. This is I'm the caretaker of this. But that is not who I am. The birthless, the deathless is my direct experience. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, you got to see the birthless and the deathless. You got to see that the I that says hello, the that which responds, has always been present. It's the same one who was there when you were 3, or 6, or 12, or 20, or 70, and there is no evidence that when you're lying on your deathbed and your body is changing into a different dimension. And Chosen went through a phase where she had lots of near-death experience, people recounting, experiences that happened after the body transformed. So that's Thich Nhat Hanh's second point. First point is not separate. Second point is that our reality is bigger than this body or our particular circumstances. So if we have a paradise on earth, we're still larger than the paradise. If we have a hell on earth, we're still larger than that. That we are bigger than our circumstances. And so that again needs to be directly verified. And the third point that he makes that we have to also look at is we keep thinking that happiness, satisfaction, love will come from somebody, someplace else. That if we get the right government, we will be happy. If we get the right partner, if we get the right job. Now, one of the things that I like to differentiate is excitement is not happiness. You can be excited on a roller coaster, and it can be thrilling, but that is not the happiness that we're talking about. You can be excited when you take an airplane ride and go to Rome. You can be excited when you meet a new partner. You can be excited with lots of ways. Excitement feels good, unless it's terror. Some people like that. Excitement is stimulating. Excitement feels, but that is not the happiness and satisfaction. And part of the reason we say that is excitement always has a down. Anything that we get excited about, it's great, it will be ungreat. It will go up and it will go down. The happiness that Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about, the happiness of practice, is a sense that doesn't have the opposite. The happiness of practicing satisfaction. The happiness of practicing loving kindness. The happiness of practicing the 4 immeasurables, of practicing compassion and sympathetic joy. The happiness that comes from wholesome activity. People are sometimes concerned about sympathetic joy, which is one of the 4 Brahma-viharas, one of the 4 divine abidings, one of the 4 kind of emotional states that Buddhism talks about are really always worth cultivating. And they're concerned, well, I have to have sympathy or I have to be happy when President Trump is sitting there signing disastrous documents in my mind, or I have to be happy when somebody is gloating over. That's not happiness. That's not the definition of happiness. Happiness is not the kind of excitement of power. It's not the kind of excitement of I'm winning at the expense of other people. Happiness has a wholesome quality to it. Wholesome. So when we're talking about sympathetic joy, we're talking about a wholesome quality of finding other people beginning to be fulfilled, enriched, to find loving kindness in themselves. So these are the 3 basic points that Thich Nhat Hanh starts off with. First off, we are not separate. We are connected to everything and everyone. Secondly, that this particular body is a temporary home, a temporary refuge, that we are more than this. And of course, all of our bodies have got problems, and all of them have limitations, and some of them are getting really old and cranky, and some of them have had lots of parts replaced, and some of them have neurological thises and that's. It's temporary. It's temporary. It's not who we are. It's temporary. We have to verify that for ourselves, though. Otherwise, we get obsessed with trying to change the outside. And the third point that he makes is that things outside, things in the future, are not going to give us what we're seeking, assuming that we're seeking wholeness, completeness, happiness, satisfaction. It's not found. It can't be found in the future. The future does not exist. We only can experience the present moment. So we have to find it right here. And how do we find it right here? By dropping our ideas of separation, dropping our ideas of otherness, by dropping our ideas of thingness. And he says that the way to do that is using emptiness, silenceless, and aimlessness. And we'll start exploring those a little later. The freedom we seek is not the kind of freedom that is self-destructive or destructive of other nations or the environment, but the kind of freedom that liberates us from our loneliness, anger, hatred, fear, craving, and despair. The teaching of the Buddha is very clear, effective, and simple to understand. It opens a path of living, not just for our personal benefit, but for our whole species. That's the introduction to the book.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.